would you put the YouTube link in our chat so that I could follow along?
I'm about to put it in Discord.
Oh, that works. Let me open that up.
Um, I'll just wait until we go live.
We're probably live about now. It's going to take a couple of seconds to start, but we're here.
Okay. Oh yeah, we are here. Hi everyone. This is Althea's September community call, and I'm Liz. I'm moderating today, and I work with Althea on all things social media, digital related. And I'm here with our founders, Jehan, Justin, and Deborah. And we also have a special guest from our Altheahood in Tacoma, B from Tacoma Cooperative Network. And so we'll be getting an update from them um, later in the call about all the fun, exciting things they've going on there. So we'll just get right into it and we'll get started. Jehan, can you give us a little introduction and a update about the blockchain and anything going on there or what to expect?
Yeah, I'm Jehan, CEO of Althea, but I also I've been mostly working on the blockchain. We've had much more of a focus on that last month. Right now, we've done the last month we did a hard fork, and we're currently planning a hard fork to upgrade the blockchain to the newest version of Cosmos, which is like the underlying framework. But right now, we're kind of waiting. There's no real rush, and we're also kind of waiting for that to be running on the Cosmos Hub, so we can see how it works and stuff like that. And when we do it, though, we're going to want to do it with the script, so that should be pretty interesting. Right now, it's there isn't really anything happening, and there probably won't be for a few weeks. So hang tight. This is going to carry payments. It's going to do payments for Althea, of course, and in the interim, though, before it's running, we're going to be switching over to XI, which is also a faster blockchain than Ethereum itself. And the thing that's kind of stopping us mostly from using our Cosmos-based blockchain right now is that the bridge into it, called Peggy, is not done yet. We're not working on that. It's being done by the Cosmos team, and we don't have the resources to sort of bring it past the finish line ourselves, but they're working really hard on it. So once that's done, there'll be a little bit more of a push to get things live. Right now, we're just kind of doing stuff to kind of try to keep our community of validators engaged and stuff. So it's a little slower cadence.
Nice. Awesome. So that, and I forgot to say, but let us know any questions you have for anyone on the panel in our chat, our running chat, and we have some questions that people sent in via our sign up form, but we will get to as many of your questions in the chat as well. So that goes to Justin. Can you give us an update? I know we've had some exciting updates in the beta and XDI bridge. So let us know about that, Justin.
Yeah, so let's see. I think the biggest user-facing feature we've added since the last community call is the XDI bridge, and there's a video on YouTube, and I'm sure Liz can drop a link in the chat about how it works. But essentially, what happens is that you deposit Ethereum, and it turns that into XDAI. So it exchanges the Ethereum for DAI, then bridges the DAI over to the XDAI blockchain. And from there, transaction fees are much lower. And you're also transacting in DAI, which means that you're only exposed to the volatility of ETH for the amount of time it takes Coinbase to send a transaction, or whatever your exchange is, to send a transaction to your router. So this is really great for a number of reasons. Mostly that it helps to give us the ability to maintain router-to-router payments, which is obviously very important for Althea to do its thing, but not be subject to the whims of Ethereum's gas prices, which, if you've kept track recently, are not so good. Althea depends on transactions being cheap enough that you can send them approximately, well, 10 cents is the target, but you want it to be cheap enough that you don't care if somebody walks out with one payment interval's worth of money. So right now, the minimum payment interval, if you want to pay 5% fees on Ethereum, varies between $1 and $2. And that's okay in the American market, not okay in the developing world. And if that were to double again, it would start to be a little iffy. So this XDAI bridge will allow us to move everybody over to a faster blockchain that is also stable, which is convenient for multiple reasons. As far as other cool things that are going on, we've really just been working on polishing the interface and sort of fixing up the back end. So a lot of my recent work has been on the automated test suite for Althea. If you want to run a virtual Althea network on your computer, we now have a lot of detailed debugging and testing features that I've been working on, because as we move from development into a sort of stable release phase, or try to move into a stable release phase, maybe the operative word, it becomes harder to produce bugs. Well, you see more obscure bugs, so you want a better testing suite. So that's where my effort's been, and y'all might enjoy playing around with it. I wrote a blog post about how to do that. I think it's 2 or 3 dev updates ago. And if you want to see what I'm working on right now, you can drop by the latest dev update and the pull requests on GitHub, specifically the Althea RS repo. Yeah, so I think that's a real update for the technology, but all the exciting stuff this update is Deborah and B and all the network progress we've been having.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Justin. I put the XDAI bridge video in the chat, so definitely check that out. And as Justin mentioned on our blog, we have some great dev updates. We have a lot of great blog posts, but the dev updates, if you're interested in what's going on technically with Althea, make sure you're checking those out. We do tweet those out. But yeah, following us on the blog is a great way to stay up to date with all our technical updates that we have. So that goes to Deborah, and we just have some really exciting things going on with our Altheahoods, lots of new stuff there, and you guys sent in some questions about starting Altheahoods, and so we are going to try to get to all of that. So Deborah, go for it.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. I'm going to give you all kind of a brief overview about what's going on, and then I really wanted to have a chance to really talk to B and have them share their experience of what it's like to start with our Altheahood program, which they did probably back in about June.
That's about when we started in earnest. You gave us kind of the push off the pier then.
Right, and then sort of take us through the last few months to where we're at right now with your network, which is almost ready to break ground probably in about late November. So I thought I'd share my screen and kind of show what we've been got going on with the Altheahoods. We have started quite a few more new Altheahoods here as well. And then some of our folks that first started out being Bees Network, which is in Hilltop, where they now have a logo for their Tacoma Cooperative Network here. They've added a lot of new registrations, and so they're growing, and then they plan on deploying here soon. And then we have another network that is at that sort of final stages as well, and that's the Oakville Network. You can see they also have a new logo and some more registrations, and are moving forward and have ordered their backhaul. So that's kind of when you're getting into the logistical stage, when the backhaul lease has been signed, and so you're a few months away from actually shovel meets the dirt phase. But we do have some new Altheahoods, one in Ontario and ZR Net Zero. Where are they at here? Oh, in Barcovin Beach, Ontario, or Cedardale Beach. So they started out looking forward, hopefully, to a build out in early 2020. And then we have a few new ones just this week in Africa, which is really exciting as well, both in Johannesburg and in Abuja in Nigeria. So look forward to seeing some progress on there, and then seeing how our model fits into not only in the United States and in Canada, but also in Africa as well, which is pretty exciting. And the way a lot of these folks get started, I just wanted to draw your attention to our Republic program as well. Because it's a really great way to go ahead and learn about Althea, get some knowledge about setting up antennas and what a network looks like. And then you can also fill out a proposal. And then we take that proposal and kind of see what your vision for Althea is in your neighborhood and work together with you to set that up. And that turns into an Altheahood with your site and marketing materials. And then myself and Liz too will kind of help you through your marketing and community outreach to get to the point where B is and where Oakville is, where they're working on the logistics to deploy. And some other exciting things for just support on that front as well. We are going to be having a webinar, a recorded webinar with Graham from Start Your Own ISP later on this month that we'll have available first part of October for y'all to be able to use. And then I'll also be developing a series of videos around some of the ways that we can make community partnerships and community outreach look in kind of a standard approach, so that you can take this into any neighborhood and work with your community leaders, even if you aren't established as a community leader yourself. So that's pretty exciting stuff. So now I think, B, you want to share with us how it's been going?
Well, it's pretty good. I think we've hit kind of a critical mass, but we're kind of pushing through that now. As you saw on the website, we're up to about 70 people. I think it was 73. And right now we are refocusing on South Hilltop, which is where our phase 1 is. And we're reconnecting with folks that we spoke to in June and July, because a lot of folks have email, but they don't check it. So we're going door to door. We're calling people saying, hey, you talked to us back in June and July. Are you still interested? We're going to be installing soon. And we're focusing on that because we got our first member and our first gateway. They joined on the 4th, David Ray. He's going to be our cornerstone in Southern Hilltop. So we're literally going down his street and the streets behind and in front of his house, telling people your neighbor down the street is our first member and is going to be transmitting signal to neighbors. Are you in for cheaper, faster internet? And people are responding. Especially when somebody is in the neighborhood, they really respond to that. Like, hey, this is real. So we're also looking for an additional 20 to 25 people to hop on, just to kind of fill out that 100 that we wanted to start with, and to make Southern Hilltop as its own network viable. February is when we're projected to start phase 2. And we already have 2 or 3 gateway possibilities in Northern Hilltop, and about 50 to 60 people already pre-registered. So phase 2, once we get phase 1 up, phase 2 is going to be a cakewalk. And we're starting in October with our pre-sales. We're offering folks to either buy in at the basic package rate. We talked, it's going to be about 100 megabits, 150 megabits best effort for folks for the basic package. And we're giving them it at about half off what it costs us. And then the pro package, it's going to be, I think we talked about between 300 and 400 megabits per second best effort. And we're doing that at about half off too. So that's going to start soon. And yeah, we're rolling.
Those packages for the equipment, right?
Yeah, for the equipment.
So yeah, just to kind of clarify too. So with B's deployment, the pro package will be rolling out with a 60 gigahertz, most likely microtik equipment with 5 gigahertz failover, and that has a higher throughput. And then that'll also be supported by a little bit more expensive and robust Linksys WRT 3200 routers. So that will have a higher throughput as well. And then the just standard package is going to be very similar to the gear that I use in my network, which is, Ubiquiti Lightbeam radios for the CPEs, and the CPE is just the customer premises equipment. It's just the radios that are at the customer's house there. And B, I was curious as well too if you could tell us a little bit more. We know you do door-to-door canvassing and you call folks and so forth, but can you also talk? I think one of the things that you and Anne have done that's been really great is your interfacing with community leaders that are already there. I was wondering if you could share with us kind of your approach and some of the things that you've done that's been successful.
We definitely are talking with community leaders. We are working really closely with an organization called Hug, Hilltop Urban Gardens. They are already producing, they're growing and producing food for the neighborhood. So we're talking with them, trying to see where maybe our interests lie, because we're both trying to help the community. And that's been a process. These are folks that have been doing community work for over 10 years. So we're kind of new to the game and are having to play the part of student in this role. But we're also talking with folks in the Hilltop Action Coalition, which is for better or for worse, it's like a chamber of commerce for Hilltop, but their roots are very much in activism. So we're I guess the best word is courting them, um, talking to them about the project, getting feedback about how to reach some of the people in the neighborhood. One challenge that we have is Ann and I are white, and the neighborhood is predominantly black. So we're having to learn how to message and how to talk to people about the fact that we're not just charity, we're actually a mutual aid organization, and that's been changing how we canvas and how we talk to folks.
Wow, that sounds really great. Can you also kind of explain how the outreach is different now than it was when you first walked into the neighborhood and started to do your canvassing versus like the efforts that you're doing now, and how it's maybe changed over the last couple months?
Well, when we first started, Ann and I both have canvassing experience to some degree, but we were both kind of new at positioning I guess a product or service like this. People were kind of wary. It kind of sounds like a multi-level marketing gig, on a face value, and we were getting kind of a lukewarm response. It wasn't bad, but we saw that there was a need, and some people were excited, and that was about it. We're coming back in the neighborhood with this new knowledge, with with already talking to some of these people, and not only are we speaking to them again, and they're going, "Oh my God, when are you building out?" They're super excited, but their neighbors have a sense of what's going on because they talk with their neighbors, and their neighbors are like, "Hey, we've seen your flyers. We've talked to some folks that have met you. We've seen you online. We are excited. We want to know more information." Um, they're a lot more welcoming now. So what we've learned is it takes a lot of contact with folks to really generate any sort of interest. They got to see you in the neighborhood. They've got to hear about you, meet you a couple times. But it's a lot much warmer response now, and I think as we go into October, we're going to see a lot better response from folks and folks jumping on, especially when we start putting signs out on folks' lawns, which is one thing we've talked about. It's going to put our logo in their face, and they're going to want to know what that is. And between that and talking with their neighbors, I think we're going to do really well.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's really amazing. And I like that you really talked about all the different sort of things that you do to sort of fill out that whole presence, whether it's on, you're online, you're canvassing, you're talking with community leaders, you're having meetings. And then just one last thing here before we kind of turn it over. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how I've noticed that you've already been recruiting relays and gateways, and I feel like that's gone really well as well. And those are, kind of like almost partners for you. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about your approach to recruiting those folks and your interaction with them.
That was interesting. I really thought I'd have to go directly to people that were interested, and we still might have to and go, "Hey, we're in the neighborhood. do you want free internet? Do you want to work with us? This is kind of what we're about. Um, and instead, people organically contacted the network, going, "Hey, I've seen your website. I've seen some of your posts. Um, this is really interesting. I'd like to be a relay, or I'd like to be an access point." So they came to our first meeting at Fab Lab, which is a makerspace in downtown Tacoma. Those who couldn't make it, I was able to get a couple of them on a video call. We talked about kind of the ins and outs and the requirements, and they're super excited. It may not work that way for every network, but I think when you get folks interested, you're going to get a couple people going that are a little more knowledgeable about networking or cryptocurrency, and they'll latch on and go, "Hey, this sounds like something I want to do too."
Awesome. Awesome. That's awesome. Anything else, Deborah, for B?
I think that was great. That was just really inspiring to hear about your story. And I think, just seeing that progression from starting out in Altheahood with, 0 people on the pre-registration list, just a few short months ago to, like I said, being shovel in the ground in a couple of months and having 70 something pre-registration, several relays and gateways. Just hearing about that story and how you went and cultivated all that trust and community outreach is just really, really, really great. And I think it's something that other folks can do too.
If you're watching and you're looking at starting one of these, it's going to seem really nebulous at first. We're already at the point where we were in Dave's basement, and he already has the area for the server, the cabinet to go. We already know where we're putting the antenna. We can already see the antennas like in our minds on people's houses. It really starts to become real at that point. I've got the server or the router that our backhaul is going to use in my car right now. Like, it's that real. It just takes a little bit of effort to get here.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah. And one of the comments from the chat was Chris with a K said, they have to be familiar and you've got to build trust. And I think that that's really demonstrate that in your story, B. So great work. And so, yeah, anyone who is interested in starting their own Altheahood out there, feel free. We have a Discord chat. I believe in the invite for the Discord chat is in the in the description. If it's not, I'll put it in the chat, and just reach out to us and anyone from the team, Deborah, and also talk to other organizers like B about what it's like to do it. So feel free to always ask questions. I'm going to get into some questions now. We had one in the chat, but I think I'm going to save that question for a little bit later because it relates to some of our more technical stuff. I'm going to go with some questions that we got from our sign-up sheet on the which relates to starting up an Altheahood. So one of those questions was, what information do you include when requesting a quote from a wholesale internet provider? So that one's for Deborah, I believe.
Yeah, that's requesting backhaul is one of the more kind of difficult things, and of course one of the more integral parts of the network. Because when you're starting a network, you don't necessarily have to be the entity running the gateway, but for many networks, it makes sense for the organizer to have a gateway that they run themselves in addition to getting the subscription. And then as you grow, you might add in you might find more partners that will want to run gateways as well. But like I said, oftentimes to start with, it makes sense to run that gateway yourself. So when you're going to look for backhaul, most of the time they're going to want an address. Now, you don't necessarily have to stick with that address. It doesn't have to be set in stone, but they need the salespeople themselves need an address to run a quote off of. And oftentimes you'll have an address and they'll say, hey, I can get nearby. Can you locate across the street or whatever else? But you need to have a couple of addresses to anchor from, and so they can build their quote off of. So that's kind of the most important part. And then when you're looking at that, it may be that address, like for example, in my network, where the fiber isn't the best location for broadcasting out to a large view shed, right? I can't reach a lot of people from where I'm at, but I can envision where I can use relays up on the hills or other houses to reach more people. So what you're really going to want to look for is, can I at least reach a relay? Can I have an address where the fiber is a little less expensive? And those are kind of your two criteria for that. And then beyond the address, the backhaul is typically sold as a lease on a month-to-month, a monthly lease, a monthly reoccurring cost, like an MRC is what they abbreviate that as, and then an NRC, or non-recurring cost, or sometimes they'll call that construction cost. So they'll often ask what your capacity you need is and how long of a lease you would like. As you're more comfortable with a longer lease, you're going to stay somewhere for 5 years, you can say that, hey, I would be interested in leasing this for 5 years. You're going to get a lower upfront cost. And oftentimes, if there is construction cost, they will reduce that as you increase the time of your lease. And typically, the lowest quantity of lease, the shortest lease time is about 2 years. So you're looking at 2, 3, or 5 years typically for a lease period. And then they're going to want to know your capacity that you need. And you might want to start a little more conservative, because oftentimes you can turn up that circuit. So you can start at 500 megabits per second or 1 gigabit per second. You can always increase over time. You have a question, Jehan?
Yeah. Will you get if you get a larger capacity, usually that's cheaper. You also get a better rate as well once you upgrade, for the bandwidth.
Yes, as you get, well, yeah. So example,
there's no benefit to starting out with a large capacity because you think you'll need it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, even though the per gigabyte or per gigabit per second price is cheaper, if you don't need it, it still is more expensive than a lower capacity. It's just sitting there being unused and unpaid for. So.
Yeah, I think the point that Jehan was sort of getting at is that you cover the like smallest increment of backhaul with your first 40 to 100 users, depending on the economics you're going for. But then after that, 10xing your so getting 10x the speed normally only doubles the cost, or something in that sort of ballpark. So your costs per user of backhaul goes exponentially lower as the network grows, is sort of the key thing to think about, because obviously that's very important for profit margins in the long term.
In the chat, Jeremy Rollinson said, Spectrum and Charter offer month-to-month DIA fiber in some markets. So that's a comment we have.
Yeah, careful. So not all DIA is actually wholesale and resellable. So DIA can also just mean dedicated internet access in a business sense, and that you actually get that chunk of the bandwidth for yourself that's dedicated. But it just check the contract. It may say that it is not resellable.
Okay. And Adam Mallon just said, as a backhaul originator, how do you protect yourself from piracy issues or other legal issues related to your network? And Thodo C asked, what would happen if someone steals my equipment? So those are 2 questions from the chat. If you want to take on those.
Well, maybe I've been talking a lot. Let's let Jehan take on that one.
Okay.
Well, yeah. So there's a thing called exit node, and basically, if we run some exit nodes, organizers can run exit nodes as well. But the exit node is where all the traffic appears to come from. So it's like a VPN server. So if you're using exit node that we run or somebody else runs, then any kind of issues around the use of that of your internet are not going to come back to you. That being said, so it's not really a concern. Also, that being said, though, on most commercial level internet access, it's not really a big problem anyway. But if you are worried, your users use one of our exit nodes, you don't have to worry about it. As far as if the equipment gets stolen, I'll leave that one to Deborah.
Well, I think it depends on what sort of equipment you're speaking of. I would assume you're meaning your equipment at the gateway. Most of your router and all of that's going to be internal inside of your building or whatever, your home or whatever. And then you'll have some equipment, radios and stuff on the roof. So, typically what most ISPs do is they have locked roof access. It's not easily accessible. So most of your larger equipment is just not easily accessible because it's either inside of your building or it's up on a roof with, locked access. And so I'm not sure that is really a common thing.
Well, I wanted to make 2 points, one on both of these questions real quick. And that is that for the exit situation, Jehan, I don't think, was quite strong enough in what he said. So the way Althea forwards traffic, you have to use a VPN server called an exit server. And there's no way for you to accidentally be exposed to traffic liability. It's always terminated by the exits. It's mandatory for it to be terminated by the exits. And if you set up an exit without knowing that you're setting up an exit, I'm really confused as to how you achieve that, because it's pretty that would be pretty incredible. So none of our routers will ever transit clear text traffic. They only transit encrypted traffic to an exit, where the exit then terminates it to the internet, and the exit will get any letters or have to deal with any enforcement actions. On the equipment theft angle, if you're worried about the money in the router, because the router does have its own private key for payments, you can back up that private key and just try and keep the balance relatively low. That's good practice anyways. And if it gets stolen, the worst that's going to happen is that the network's going to go down until you find a replacement. But that's also kind of difficult because the router with the key in it is normally indoors, whereas the antennas are outdoors. We haven't really had any theft problems in Deborah's network, and they're not really very common because most of the time they're in places where you can only reach them with a ladder. So it would require quite a determined thief for pretty cheap equipment overall.
And they look a lot like satellite dishes, which are even cheaper, so people are not really that interested. And they're covered in bird poop and stuff. So.
That's also a deterrent.
A compelling reason, Jehan.
Sort of, C does say.
B has a thing. I'm sorry to interrupt. It looks like B had a.
Rental insurance is $12 a month, and it would cover that even if it happened.
Okay.
Just
good.
saying.
That's true. There's also the other element is now our philosophy at Althea is that everybody should own their own equipment, and make up their own infrastructure. That being said, in a lot of circumstances, it is easier if the organizers, especially when starting a network, out before people know what it is and stuff, if the organizers can help people buy the equipment like they're doing at TCN, and then kind of make the money back over time. And in that situation, I don't think we've talked about it all. We may want to have some sort of contract you sign with the homeowner if it is, equipment they're borrowing or leasing somehow. But again, also business insurance would cover that if they just, ran off with it or something like that. So,
right.
It's probably not a big issue.
Right. But Sorosi did say they have a hotel, so on the roof it would be more accessible. So in situations where it's more accessible, I don't think that's something we've dealt with, but if anyone has any more thoughts or any extra thoughts.
I haven't noticed, like, amongst the wireless ISP community that it's been a major problem, and maybe in other parts of the world or something like that. But I think in Canada and the US, as far as there is lots of wireless infrastructure, and it's not typically a really common problem.
Okay, great. I'm going to go to a question from our sign-up sheet. And this is how to present Althea in the clearest, best light when requesting the said wholesale quotes. So how do you get a good deal, I think is what that question is getting at, if I may say.
Yeah, well, that's still sort of an evolving question, right? I think that we're happy to come in and help you with that. We do have some contacts with backhaul that we're happy to come in and try to just get quotes on our own too. What I have noticed is that once you do have a quote, you can use that as leverage when you get another quote. So you want to get more than one quote is what I'm kind of getting at. You want to say, okay, well, this other guy, has a quote, and then what is yours, and then you can get multiple quotes. And like I said, we're also kind of happy to come in and get quotes for you or help you with that. And then the third thing is that in certain circumstances, you might find where you can partner with another ISP. Maybe it's a local WISP that's nearby, or it's a middle mile carrier that might be interested in running some Althea equipment on the edges of their network. And you could pursue some sort of a partnership agreement, and we'd be happy to help you work through what those negotiations could look like. However, that's probably not going to be the case in places.
Yeah, we're this has been something that we've wanted to accomplish for a long time, is to have middle mile carriers who you would be buying the bandwidth from be on board and actually be running Althea equipment, so that the bandwidth is bought per gigabyte. That really eliminates a lot of the upfront cost and difficulty of starting a network, because that gets rid of the the lease and the upfront costs and all that. So that being said, that's in the works. We are talking with a middle mile carrier in Canada, but we don't have anything solid. But in most normal situations, what you're doing with Althea, actually to them, it doesn't look any different than any wireless ISP. And that's who they sell to all day. So it doesn't really make a huge difference from their end, as long as you're paying them.
Got it. And this another question from the sign-up sheet that relates a little bit to that. When to lease wholesale, co-locate with a business, or lease public fiber for gateway nodes? Is that kind of, we may have already answered that.
Yeah, I think that the last sentence is interesting too, is at least public fiber. So one of the options that is available in some areas is that sometimes municipalities or counties, maybe they have an open access network that you can easily, lease fiber from, or maybe there's a municipality that also has some fiber in that area. So you always want to at least take a look at that and see if there is any possibilities. And that's just as simple as, going and talking to your municipality, the IT person there, or the county, and getting an idea if there's anything available there. So I think it's always a good idea to look at what those options are. Oftentimes they're less expensive than commercial.
Awesome. Amazing. Yeah, so look at all your different options there. And any recommendations for PPE equipment?
I brought props. This is our most commonly used CPE in Plattsburgh. It is the Ubiquity Light Beam. These are about $60 on Amazon. They come in this tiny box, and then you set them all up. They're easy to set up. I can get 100 megabits per second out of these guys, and they go a couple of miles pretty easily. And they're just all around easy to use antennas.
Take it out of the box.
Oh, I don't know it. I think this one might have already been rated.
What's in the box?
I don't know. Are we?
Box?
So what, are we going to become an unboxing channel now?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh no. You've already installed somebody with that antenna.
So that one we'll have to do another unboxing another time. But this guy is my kind of ace in the hole for longer lengths. This is the Power Beam. So higher gain antenna, a little bit better radio, and this they advertise this as like at least 10 kilometers or something like that. But I don't know that it really goes that far. But it does pretty good. And any of my sort of longer links, I put these in here. They're about $90 on Amazon. You get them in pairs as well, and they work really well. So, and that's for 5 gigahertz gear. And then in the 60 gigahertz gear, we recommend something like Microtech. They have the wireless wires, both the dishes for a little longer range, or the little tiny guys there for shorter distances.
Awesome. Great. So I think if that's everything about our Altheahoods and equipment and setting up and getting your backhaul sorted, we did have one more question that relates to some of the earlier things we talked about Cosmos. So I will that was from the chat, and Thodos asked, what's your take on Cosmos having having centralized hubs? So I think that's Jehan or Justin can answer that.
Um, I don't know. I don't know what that's in reference to. There may be something that I'm not aware of, but basically the way Cosmos works is that it's a proof of stake blockchain, which means that the instead of having miners, people have tokens that represent governance power, I guess, and then they can delegate those to validators who actually run the software. So some really hardcore Bitcoin people think that proof of stake itself is centralized. If that is what it's in reference to, then I would have to disagree with that. But it would also be possible for someone. Cosmos, the whole concept is that these chains connect together through a protocol called IBC. Conceivably, you could have a chain that people were connecting to that was centralized, like one entity had all of the staking tokens on it, basically. I don't know if that would be an issue. I think what we're doing right now with our chain is we're actually going to be connecting it directly to Ethereum to get the DAI in. There is a Cosmos hub which is intended to connect all the chains together, but we won't be using that right off the bat. Because it's a lot easier to buy Ethereum and DAI and stuff for people in the real world. So we're connecting to Ethereum. So we're not even going to be connecting to a hub. We're just using Cosmos as more of a framework. So I don't know if there are centralized Cosmos, if the Cosmos hub itself, if you consider it to be centralized, if that's your opinion, but we're not connected to it anyway. If there are centralized ones out there, we're not connected to those. So I don't feel like I'm giving that good of an answer to what that question was. Are they still in the chat? Have they clarified that?
They haven't said anything. They have been in the chat since then. So yeah, so to see if you have any more questions or clarifications, let us know in the chat and we can answer
further. You can
further.
also go in Discord, in the Althea Validators channel in Discord, and then we can continue the conversation.
Yeah, and that's everyone. You can join our Discord, the general, or we have a validators chat, and also one for organizers when you become an organizer. So you can ask questions there, and we can continue these discussions. Just a few more comments from the chat. Back to talking about equipment. Jeremy Rollinson says light beams are also light and easy to mount, and so that's nice when you're up on the ladder. So they're great for putting up there. Adam Mellon said, will it be possible to use the Althea router software in custom routers like pfSense, which I think we've talked about on other calls?
Yeah,
Justin.
so pfSense is a popular appliance, and for good reason. It's really great. It is BSD based, and I haven't tried to, well, Althea depends on a lot, as it's currently implemented, depends on a lot of direct Linux concepts, like, EB tables, IP tables. I think most of these are translatable, and I'm pretty sure it really wouldn't be a big problem to get it working over on, I think it's FreeBSD is pfSense? Is it, or is it NetBSD? I forget. But some BSD revision. So port wouldn't be exceptionally hard, but what I would suggest right now is that you just go and virtualize an Althea node. Just take our little OpenWRT image and virtualize it. It consumes like 500 megabytes of RAM if you want to be generous, 64 if you don't. So it's pretty trivial just to go ahead and do that and hook it up to an interface that way, and then place pfSense south or north of it as appropriate.
Awesome. And yes, and Adam agreed with you. Adam in the chat agreed with you. Yes, FreeBSD. So I popped the Discord invite in the chat, so you can continue any of these discussions we've been having there. We are also on Twitter, and so follow us on Twitter. You can also follow Jehan, Justin, and Deborah, and TCN Co-op, TCN Coop, on Twitter to get all their updates and to continue these conversations. And also follow Althea Network on Twitter, and we will talk more there and update you guys. If there's any last questions, I think not from the chat. If you guys want to go through and say your last words, we can just go down the line and start with B. Just sign off, and then we'll be done. So thank you for the great chat.
Yeah, I'm grateful that y'all had me on, and I think the next few months are going to be real interesting, and I'm kind of excited.
Awesome. Thanks. Next, Deborah, do you want to last words?
Want to thank B again for joining us and being such an inspiration. And we're really excited to have you here today, and excited for the next few months. We've got some deployments coming on board. So look forward to the next community call.
Awesome. Yep. And Justin?
Yeah, so I'm excited about some of the newer polish elements, and to really see the to really see the XI bridge in action. It's going to be a fun moment when we transition to production network. Scary, but I'm still looking forward to it.
Great. And thank you everyone in the chat. And Jehan, take us out of here.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody who's participated in the Republic thing and watched all of our long, boring videos, and also filled out proposals to start Altheahoods, because that's what makes it all happen. And Liz, any last words?
I'm good. I'm just here to moderate. So I'll see you guys next time. Let me know your questions. Thank you.